Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a wrestling video. This is a little different. Now, supposedly October 12th, in Cleveland, Ohio, a young teenage girl or a full-grown woman, either one, maybe she was near full-grown, gets on a Cleveland bus and basically starts harassing the bus driver because she wasn't willing to pay. Now, I believe this because I've seen it myself. In New York, you got a lot of teenagers who will jump in the back of the bus when the door opens, so they don't have to pay for nothing. Even adults do it. Let's be honest. I've seen it. But the thing that gets it really bad here is this. This girl is cursing at the bus driver while the bus is in motion. They're both doing a confrontation back and forth. Eventually, the girl puts her hands on the guy and then spits at him. He stops the bus, gets out of his seat, and uppercuts the woman like he was a prize fighter, and then tried to throw her ass out of the bus. After he does this, she jumps back into the bus, and they continue fighting. The thing that's really bad is when it was all finished, when they weren't touching one another, I can hear the crowds of people, as well as the girl, saying, "You have no right hitting this woman. You have no right hitting me. I'm a woman." Now, I saw the response to this. I'm going to try and see if I can connect both of them. What was said in the news and a site, I think it's YNNY, the guy who does it. I'm not sure if he's going to let me be viewed on here, but if the guy does, thank you very much. I'm a novice at this, doing reviews on stuff, so if I mess up a little bit, sir, sorry. But look, if you've seen the video, and I was just looking around because I just uploaded one of my wrestling videos for Hell in a Cell. That was the prediction one. You know what? Seeing this, look, if people looking at me right now, they probably think I'm not black. I'm part black. I'm mixed. My mom was black. She was also Chinese and supposedly Native American. I'm mixed with 4 different races in me, also Puerto Rican. I'm 41 years old. I may look a bit young, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm that old. And I remember when I was a kid how people used to act in old New York. And when I mean old New York, old rundown New York, unlike New York right now. And how people acted compared to how they act now. Now, a lot of people are going to say that New York has always been nasty, kind of like Cleveland, Ohio. Over near Chicago, people have a certain attitude. If you go into Brooklyn, baby, you don't know what it's like to be in a rough area of New York. Bronx, the same thing. Brooklyn is just as bad as the Bronx. They'll shoot you if they're in a bad mood. They'll beat the crap out of you. They will curse at you. And this is the problem I see. Now, I've seen the video from the gentleman from, I believe, the show YNNY.net. And a lot of what he says does make some sense of how black women act. But this is the problem I see. I'm a little different in this gentleman, in his view, which he has his valid view. The problem is this. Since the time of the Civil War, a lot of people who are the descendants of those slaves have had disrespect put on them, have had hate put on them, I understand that, have had segregation put on them, have always felt, because of how they've been treated, like they're nothing. But here's the problem, and I believe that Bill Cosby said it best. It's not about the white man anymore. It's not about Spanish people. It's not about Asian people. It's not about the Jewish, no matter if they're white or black, because you got some black Jews, especially when they come from the Middle East, because Arabs are not white-skinned. They're way darker than that. They're very tan. You even have some people, like even in Indonesia, there's some people who are Muslim, who are like that. I'm saying it like this. It's no longer about any of the races. And I know people will say, and there's some evidence that show that there's some type of problem where some other race, even along with white, let's be honest, there's some other races out there. Not every person, every race is against black people. Not. There's always going to be good people in a race, and there's bad people. I know a lot of black people right now that are watching this. A lot of them will say, no, bullshit. There's a lot of people out there against black people. Yes, there is. But there are a lot of good people. But here's the problem. The worst person that's going after black people is black people. And I'll explain it like this. It has been roughly 400 some odd years. There's only one other race in existence who's been treated worse than black people. Worse. And I know a lot of people are going to say there is no race worse. Yes, it is. Look at the people on the reservations. And I'm part Native American too. They're the only ones who have been treated worse than black people for the simple fact, not only do they have their culture taken from them, not only do they have their land taken from them and then moved around, not only have they had their, basically the most sacred things of their religion taken from them and then put into a school, like black people, get this, they're not really liked in their religion because there are a few that still follow it. They're shunned by it. Their numbers are very small, way less than Americans that are black. And essentially speaking, they're literally given, and they take it because they believe they have nothing left, which they do, liquor. They're killing themselves with liquor right now. So they're worse than black people, and black people are bad. But get this, just like the Native Americans, the problem I see with both is that they hate themselves. They don't see it. Yes, segregation treated black people like crap. I'm a child from a woman who was born from 1929. Yes, I am 41 years old. My mother was born in 1929, right before the stock market crash. January 27th, 1929. I am born from a woman from the older generation, unlike some of these people who are born who are from someone who's 15, 18 years old. I'm from the older generation where they don't want to talk about how bad it was. And if they do talk about how bad it was, they want to make you cry because you don't want to deal with it. You don't even want to think about it. Or you think, oh, that could never happen to me. If you were back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, if you black, they would kick your ass, laugh at you, and say you're nothing but a damn nigger. And I wish to say that name and that word is the most disgusting thing, and this also goes with how we hate ourselves. See it like this, ladies and gentlemen. The word Negro was the next stage over slave. They stopped calling people slaves by the beginning of 1890s into the 20th century. They started calling slave Negroes. Still basically meaning in the Spanish word, from what I understand, is black. I do not speak Spanish, even if I am part Spanish. But black, essentially, is not much different than slave to a black person. But get this, what are they calling each other right now in the street? My nigga? You're nothing but a damn nigga? This word still basically meant subhuman. Even if it's just a word that is Spanish, it is subhuman to a black person. And get this, black people are calling each other that all the time. When it comes to rap, hey, my nigga, let's go roll. It's a waste. I know people will say, no, it's not that anymore. It still is that. Because if, and understand this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not black, if you're Spanish, and you're called something that is insulting to a Spanish person, and then it was turned to another word that is still basically insulting, but you yourself, who is Spanish, uses that word, but say a white person uses it, or a black person uses it who's non-Spanish, you get insulted. That's when the word still means something. For a black person, nigga, if it's if it's not coming from another black person, no matter if their skin is light-skinned or dark, they get beyond insulted saying you're against my civil rights. This is why I tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, this word should never still be used. For the simple fact, if a black person gets upset that someone else says it, what's the difference between you saying to another black person as just a greeting? This is where the problem is. Like Bill Cosby said, we have destroyed ourselves. After 1965, when Malcolm X died, and when Martin Luther King died, and just before that, John F. Kennedy died, I know he's white, and I know people say, why are you putting him in there? Simple. These three individuals helped to change the face of civil rights. And I know a lot of people are going to say, why are you putting John F. Kennedy there? As a president, John F. Kennedy did care about black people. He stated it. He stated in some of his speeches before he died in 1963. He did. No matter how much Malcolm X, before he changed his mind about how he viewed white people, he still cared. John F. Kennedy cared about black people then. And what happened? He got a bullet through the skull for his service to our country. Malcolm X, before he changed from how he felt about how black people compared to white people were. And if you've never seen Malcolm X, I'm going to make it basic. Malcolm X believed white people were oppressing black people. But by the time of his death, he changed his mind and began to think somewhat like Martin Luther King, where he believed that after going to the Holy Land, where he saw basically blacks, Muslims, and white Jews, he realized he was wrong, and he changed his mind, and he decided that we should all be one people, and he got a bullet in the head or the chest for his duty, for his final understanding. And Martin Luther King got the same thing. His I have a dream. And my mother, and I wish to say again, my mother was born 1929, was there during the Million Man March. She was there during that march where they didn't know if they could have been killed by police officers or the military. And she went there, believing that there could be something more. But after 68, really, that's when everything goes wrong, because then black people didn't understand what to do with themselves anymore. The civil rights fight was over. And I know people will say, no, it wasn't. It was. But the simple fact is this. Two major leaders were killed. One president was killed during that time, from around the 1950s all the way into the 1960s. We're talking about between 1955, no, actually 1953. Before what happened with Rosa Parks, there was another gentleman, a gentleman, I can't remember his name right now, who also pushed the movement by the 1950s, around 1953 to 55. And I tell you, from 53 until 65, that is when they were really fighting for civil rights, when it was beyond apparent. But right after that, into the 70s, it was different. People weren't thinking about the same way with civil rights. Black people changed. They didn't care. Many people went into drugs because they just didn't want to think about it no more. Many people went into crime because they didn't want to think about it anymore. Many people went into religion because they didn't want to think about it anymore. One man created Kwanzaa, which is a very beautiful thing. It's no different than Christmas, but get this. When you decided to switch from an American holiday to an African holiday, to reclaim your African heritage, in a sense, you also forgot about what's going on with the civil rights. And I know people will say, no, that's not right. It is. Even though I'm not saying it wasn't a good thing, it was. But there's no mindfulness, because I met people who follow more of an African descent attitude, who are Americans. They don't want to hear nothing about American attitude. They don't want to hear nothing about American beliefs. They don't want to hear nothing about how Americans are supposed to act. They want to act more African. But when they go to Africa, many times they don't like it. Others do. This is what Bill Cosby say, and this is what I'm saying now. We have forgotten ourselves, for the simple fact that once the civil rights movement was over, once our two major leaders were killed, the movement was destroyed. And the point that how people perceived themselves was destroyed. Children from those people who are from the civil rights movement don't have any heart anymore. They don't. When rap came in, originally rap was fun. Now it's thuggish, because what I said earlier about people going into drugs, into crime, they promoted that. Many people who were into drugs and the crime ended up in jail. In New York, we drop our pants down to our knees. I don't do this myself. I see teenagers doing it, and some adults doing it still. And understand, that came from jail. Much of our crime came from jail. Our attitude in our rap, in our basic hip-hop culture, is all from jail. And right now, people are tending to forget everyone who died years ago in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s, who was fighting for freedom, for your religious rights and your civil rights. Honestly, they should never even gave up their lives because of how people are acting, particularly what happened with the Cleveland girl and the bus driver, where the bus driver uppercuts her ass, and then she screams later along with several other women on the bus, "That's a woman, you don't do this." And the guy said it best. He said, "If you want to act like a man, I'm going to treat you like one." But I do differ from the man who I'm going to connect this video with if he's willing to accept this. It's not white people who are causing this anymore. It's not Asian people who are trying to cause this. It's not Mexican people trying to cause this. It's not Italian people trying to cause this. If they contribute to it, yes, there are some factions within every religion who's always trying to cause some type of trouble to another religion. Not religion. Mainly to a race. Sorry, I said religion, ladies and gentlemen. But every race has some small group of it who has a tendency to try and mess up another race, particularly to black. I won't deny that. I've seen it, but the majority of every race is not against black people. But that's not the problem. It's black people themselves. How they do their comedy, how they do their rap, how they do their basic music that's non-rap, how they perceive themselves in their shows, on TV. Come on, let's be honest. Most of the shows that are reality right now is crap. Very few shows right now actually promote really good, healthy beliefs in American blacks. This is where the problem is. American blacks don't want to look at what was going on with Leave It to Beaver. They don't want to look at what was going on with any of that. They identify with what? Basically Jeffersons? Seriously? The only thing that's different from the Jeffersons is that if George wasn't running some dry cleaning business, he would be a typical black man that would be complaining against white people that are honkies, should not have his son marry a white woman, and always complain that he deserves better because he's black. Leave It to Beaver made it basic simple. I know that's not one of the greatest things to say because that's in the 50s where that was during the time of segregation. But see it like this. This is what they used to call the nuclear family. You had a mom, you had a dad, and you got kids. I know now things are different. Well, both parents got to work. But that's not the point. In a family, you have a mother who cares about her kids to try and interact with them. You got a father, even if he works, he interacts with his kids. Then you have kids who have full, controlled understanding and moral values. And what I mean control is that their parents teach them, this is right, this is wrong. Don't go out and do something like this. Do this, it's the right thing to do. If you're going to have sex with someone, wait until they get married. Don't fuck someone before then. Sorry for my language. But let's be honest. This is how things go back then. And then by 68, black people didn't want to even have nothing to do with how a nuclear family worked. A lot of people say that was because of white people. No. If there was some influence, yes, some. But it still comes down to black people making the final decision to do it. Because this is what it comes down to. That girl, if she didn't have to change, because it was already stated by one of the passengers, that the guy tried to say, look, I'll let you ride a little bit, but you're going to have to basically get off the bus if you don't have to change. He gave her 3 stops before finally there was a problem on the bus. And all that confrontation went. And the only thing she had to do was get off the bus. That's the only thing she had to do. She didn't want to do it. So this shows how how bad American blacks, not just black women, but white black men, black teens, and black older adults are, because of how bad things went during the civil rights and how bad things are when nobody wanted to try and make a real nuclear family anymore. Look at the Chinese. They have a nuclear family. No matter how much you want to say, oh, that's stupid, their culture is different. You have a mother, and now China is different because now both sexes have to work now. They have their traditions. They have all that. And understand, a lot of times they were always controlled by the Japanese. Japanese traditions may be similar, but they used to try to destroy them. They used to try to destroy the family there. It's no different, but they managed to reconstruct something to make it work. For every race, there's always been someone trying to subjugate them, but it's always somehow they make it work. Look at the Haitians. They got conquered by the French, the Spaniards, and the English. They are completely messed up, but get this, they still manage to keep their family tight. They still have a nuclear family. They're able to keep their family even coming to America. They keep them close-knit, not just because they come from another country, it's because they kept their moral values. Black Americans don't got that. And you know how they got to get it back? It's simple. One, the day that nigger is no longer used in any slang is the beginning of it. Now, no. If the young doesn't give a damn about how the past was, unless their asses are in trouble, it won't work. If the middle-aged, not old, but like in the late 30s, they act the same way, it won't change. When the adults act the same way, or senior citizens, it won't change. As long as that criteria fits, there won't be a beginning of a change. If all three groups, teenagers and children, adults nearing middle age, and the elderly, if they all still think of themselves as nigger, say my nigger, say don't you call me a nigger, that's when it's always going to be wrong. I know that word will always float around, but if we don't use it no more as slang, that's how it can begin to change. But nobody's going to want to do that. That's just the first step, ladies and gentlemen. There are many steps that need to be done until we finally change. But they won't start until we don't stop seeing ourselves as niggers. I see myself and understand as a mixed person where most of the people dominantly see Spanish. They expect me to speak Spanish because they've been ingrained in their brain. Most Puerto Ricans or Dominicans or anyone else that is from a Spanish or a Latin country believe that Spanish is the only thing that matters because that's the identifying thing for their culture. No. A language is not the identifying thing for the culture. Nothing is. The most important thing is to be seen as a person. King said it simply. You must be seen as a person. Forget about your race. Be mindful of it there. He's not saying to forget it, but to be mindful of it. See yourself as a person. Black people are not seeing themselves as persons. They're seeing themselves as black. That's where it goes wrong. The minute they stop seeing themselves as niggers, as black, as persons, that's when the first beginning of the change starts. And it ain't going to happen until then. When that starts, everything else could start going to play. A nuclear family could come back. More self-worth in themselves. And not thinking that one day someone's going to say something they don't like about black people and about themselves. When we can do that, that is how things can change. Where drugs won't be a total problem in here. Where crime won't be a total problem. And what we saw on the bus, where that girl was cursing her ass off, calling that driver a damn nigger, and him doing it back, won't be a problem. So I hope you enjoyed the Zane's View. This isn't one of the things I usually do, but I like to change it up a bit to show that people can actually think about more than just like wrestling or anything if they got something smart on the brain. So I hope you do like it. Please give me a comment. Tell me if what I'm saying doesn't make sense to you. I hope you give me a subscribe. But know that I mostly do wrestling videos. So have a good day.